You step through the postcard of white marble temples that every schoolbook sold you and walk straight into a furnace. Ancient Greece, 430 BCE. No shimmering filters, no lyrical pan flute. Only the sting of goat manure and the metallic taste of dust that never leaves your tongue. The dare is simple. Survive one dawn, to dawn cycle exactly as an average Athenian and see whether you're still humming Ode to Joy by sunset. First obstacle, where you sleep. Your oikos looks romantic in torchlight, but when Helios peeks over the Acropolis it shows its rot. Walls of mud brick patched with straw, pitted like diseased skin. Sliver, windows without glass, a fire, pit that smokes more than it warms. Summer turns the room into a clay bread oven, winter into a shrieking icebox. You toss on a reed mat alive with lice, while mice rattle amphorae and a tethered nanny goat investigates what passes for your pillow. Comfort is theoretical. Survival is practical. Before the rooster coughs, those sun-soaked walls begin to radiate yesterday's heat back into your ribs. Water run. You shoulder 2 empty hydrae and join the half-awake queue snaking toward the public fountain. Athens sits on limestone. Wells are deep and grudging. Each jar, once filled, weighs nearly 30 kilos. One slip on the broken flagstones, and you're rewarded with shards, and another trip, bath time at least. That's the optimistic label. You ladle a cup over your scalp, smear olive oil onto skin still gritty from yesterday, then scrape the slurry of sweat and dust off with a bronze strigil. The courtyard offers privacy only when the family politely faces the wall. Shame is a luxury, like purple dye or imported peppercorn. Breakfast? A fist-sized puck of day, old barley marza. Its texture, sandstone. Dunk it in watered wine because plain water is a microbial roulette and pray your molars hold. If the household ledger smiled yesterday, you might find a fig, an olive, a sliver of goat cheese. Women eat last, children eat fastest. Nobody sits. You chew, nod to your father, and slip through the low doorway into the blinding busy dawn. Outside, the agora hums like a struck lyre, string vendors unrolling mats, hoplites clanking toward drill, slaves already running errands for men who will soon vote to send them to war. The marble ideal is gone. Only heat, noise, and responsibility remain. The sun climbs like an overseer, flogging every unshaded alley. By now your tunic just 2 rectangles of coarse linen has glued itself to skin. Underwear isn't a concept. A single bronze pin is all that stands between decency and an impromptu comedy for the fishmongers. Sandals? A pickpocket lifted them during the water run, so you tiptoe across flagstones hot enough to roast chickpeas. A quick detour to the palestra promises cleanliness. A trainer appends a jar of rain, cold water over your head, then hands you oil. Smear, scrape, repeat. No soap, no towel, only a bronze strigil that leaves tracks in the dust film on your arms. Charcoal on the teeth, vinegar gargle, and you're as fresh as Athens gets, meaning you merely reek of goat, garlic, and democracy. Clang of bronze shields, midday drill. Every able male must know the phalanx. You lock elbows with fishmongers and potters, each lugging whatever armour he could afford. Your hoplon is willow wood, faced with thin bronze. A Spartan spear would treat it like cheese rind. Sweat blinds. Instructors bellow, and you glimpse the city walls, shimmering a reminder that real arrows could fly before the cicadas stop singing. Back in the maze of courtyards, women keep the polis breathing. Your sister bends over the quernstone, pulverizing barley while toddlers tug her himation. She'll weave, fetch water, mend sandals, soothe the fever, and still eat last. Property, vote, voice anoni belong to her, though every thread in your tunic passed through her blistered fingers. Across the gulf in Sparta she'd train and inherit estates, but here her ambition is measured in how finely she spins wool. The ecclesia bell tolls. Citizens barely 10% of living soulstream uphill to decide war, taxes, and whose name will be etched on an ostraca for 10 years exile. You scratch clay with a borrowed stylus, aware that the man you just banished may have saved your flank in yesterday's drill. Such is equality under Helios. Market stalls close early when a dust cloud looms along the sacred way. Rumour rides the wind. grain ships overdue, a Tyrian vessel docking with fever on board. Mothers hush children. Merchants slap lids on olive jars. Hoplites grip spear shafts already worn smooth. The city seems to hold its breath, waiting, hoping the first rasping cough belongs to a donkey. Afternoon, heat beats down as you skirt the agora's rim and enter a world most citizens pretend not to see. Slave sewn in every 3 bodies you pass move like living tools. A Thracian boy with blue tattoos staggers under marble blocks, destined for a new stoa. A Phoenician scribe shadows his master, ready to recite accounts in 3 languages, yet forbidden to own his own name. In a side alley, a silver-haired woman from Ephesus winces while a smith brands her shoulder, proof of purchase in case she runs. You swallow the sour knowledge that tomorrow's vote on a war with Corinth may hinge on whether the mines at Lorien need fresh, disposable lungs. Someone screams. Not a lash this time, pain, of another sort. You follow the knot of onlookers to a makeshift clinic. Reed mats, buzzing flies, 1 harried iatrose. A mason's leg lies shattered, bone white against sun-blackened skin. Diagnosis? Imbalance of hot and dry humours. Treatment? Heated knife, a prayer to Apollo, and garlic poultice thick as mortar. No opium left. You watch 2 slaves pin the man's shoulders while the surgeon saws. The air smells of bronze and fear. The patient's roar crashes over the crowd until olive leaves are stuffed in his mouth. Survive or not, he'll limp on a stumper, be sold cheap to a tannery. You need air. Southward, the theatre of Dionysus yawns open, an enormous stone bowl drinking sunlight and gossip. For 3 obols you claim a seat polished by 1,000 other backs. The festival is midway through a triple bill. First, a tragedy where a king blinds himself. Next, a rib-cracking comedy ridiculing that very king. Finally, a bawdy satyr play because grief is exhausting. Actors stride in 30-centimetre cork sandals, voices booming through funnel-mouthed masks. Around you, citizens debate punchlines. Slaves fetch wine. And somewhere, a pickpocket calculates odds. Art and anarchy share the same bench. Intermission, you stretch, only to hear a slow, familiar drawl. Tell me, friend, what is courage? Socrates pop, eyed, barefoot, magnet for trouble, has chosen the theatre steps for his latest ambush. He peppers you with questions, dismantling every answer until your thoughts feel like that mason's leg. A few laugh, others mutter that jurors are watching. After his death sentence years from now, these exchanges will read like philosophy. Today they feel like public vivisection. The sun tilts west, shadows lengthen, and a cooler wind sneaks in from Piraeus carrying, perhaps more than salt spray. Dusk stains the Acropolis purple as the theatre crowd spills back into the agora, feet crunching on shards of broken potsherd, some litter, some votes. At the Tholos, a cordon of Scythian archers funnels citizens toward wicker baskets, brimming with fresh ostraka. You scratch a name while pretending the choice was easy. 6,000 shards with the same letters, and the man is gone it in years' exile. No trial, no appeal. Tonight, the tallymaster's lamp glows late. Every clink of fired clay could sever friendships, families, alliances. You tell yourself it's democracy. Your stomach knots, remembers it's only digested a fist-sized hunk of barley since dawn. A sudden fit of coughing snaps heads around. A sailor from that Tyrian ship doubles over, flecks of crimson on his beard. Market women cross themselves. A baker spits to avert the evil eye. You edge away, pulse banging, and almost collide with a funeral procession threading through the torchlight. The corpse child Cicede swaddled in linen, a single obol tucked beneath the tongue for Karen. She never learned her letters. She never had to. Half of all children won't outlast their first decade, and adults are old by 40th plague, spear, or childbirth, hasn't already signed the warrant. You watch her father shove back tears. Grief is unmanly, but the gods are always watching. Speaking of gods, the city readies its nightly appeasement. Up the sacred way, braziers hiss as priests pour honeyed wine for Athenopolius. A spotless goat balks at the altar. 2 acolytes grip its horns, while a third whispers the beautiful lies, thanking the animal for nodding its consent. The blade flashes, blood spatters hot on marble, and a chorus erupts. Flutes, cymbals, 100 throats chanting so no daemon mistakes silence for invitation. Somewhere beyond the torch glare lurk lesser spirits, river nymphs that drown careless swimmers, hearth sprites that sour milk if neglected, fury goddesses who dog oath breakers. Piety is not virtue here, it is insurance. You slide a fingertip through the sacrificial smoke, draw a quick private circle over your heart. The olive branch fire pops, sparks winging upward like frantic souls. Above, the waxing moon rims itself with a thin, unsettling halo. The temple astronomer mutters about omens. A veteran fingers a scar that never quite healed. Even Socrates, still prowling for arguments, glances skyward and falls momentarily silent. Somewhere beyond the long walls, a conch-horn bleatzone note, then another. Signal of what? The conch sounds again, lower now, like a throat clearing the city refuses to hear. Veterans pause mid-drink, merchants slide shutters, a magistrate jogs uphill, cloak snapping. The rumour flies faster than any herald. Corinthian raiders sighted off Sunion, maybe mere spectres on moonlit waves, doesn't matter. Every citizen over 18 knows what the horn means. Duty. You find yourself in the smoky courtyard of the Dem Armoury, shoulder to shoulder with potters, poets, drunkards tonight, all hoplite. No standing army here. Democracy fights by crowd, sourcing. Bring your own bronze or beg, because the phalanx cares only that every gap is filled. You fumble with the kit inherited from your father. Helmet that pinches, breastplate hammered thin to save weight, round aspis shield still smelling of last year's mildew. A blacksmith tightens the leather grip, muttering a price you can't pay until after the campaign if you come back with both hands to count coins. Torchlight reddens the walls as a taxiarch drills you through the ancient litany. 8 in a row, shields overlapping, spears angled like a single iron comb ready to rake flesh. Hold, he barks, walking the line and rapping idle shafts. Your neighbour's life hangs on your left arm. Drop it, and the gods will watch you die screaming. You swallow, tasting goat blood from the earlier sacrifice still floating in the night air. A whip-thin youth beside you adjusts his helm. Through the eye, slits you catch the flutter of real fear. He whispers that his mother sold a silver pin, her only jewellery, for the bronze greaves hugging his shins. Another man, older, boasts scars from Tanagra and Delium, but you notice his hand trembling as he wipes nose drip onto the rim of his shield. Bravery, it seems, is mostly choreography, performed until daylight makes it real. Midnight nears. A priest of Ares circles the ranks, sprinkling wine that steams where it hits hot armour. He chants the names of every polis ally. You listen for Sparta, and remember they might march beside you or against, depending on this month's treaty. Politics here is weather. Changeable, seldom fair, always fatal to those who forget umbrellas. Finally, the horn bleats a third time stand down. The sails offshore were Aeginetan traders, not enemies. Laughter erupts, ragged and too loud, but no one uncouples their shield. A reprieve, not a pardon. You trudge home through alleys now slick with sacrificial runoff, armour clanking like a dull bell announcing your own mortality. Dawn prees open your eyelids before the rooster thinks to crow. Armour welts burn on your shoulders, and a salt-dry thirst rasps every swallow. Last night's panic drill left you soaked in sweat that chilled to ice before you reached the lintel. Now a fever twitches behind your eyes like a trapped moth. In Athens, illness is never merely physicality, is a riddle for gods, humours, and luck to solve. You shuffle to the courtyard cistern and ladle tepid water over your head. The shock steadies your sight long enough to notice the bilious tint in the basin's reflection. Yellow skin, says Hippocratic law, proves your black bile has rebelled. Across the alley, an itinerant iatros advertises cures with a painted plank, garlic leeches divine songs. You spit phlegm as green as olive leaves and decide even leeches sound reasonable. The physician arrives smelling of boiled vinegar and goat tallow. No white robe just, a frayed himation stained by earlier patients. He presses knuckles beneath your ribs, nods gravely, and blames an imbalance of warm and cold airs flooding the liver. Prescription. Bleed the bad humour, Purge the rest, pray to Apollo, and avoid figs. A boy assistant unwraps a bronze lancet. The edge still bears last week's rust. You wince but extend an arm. Blood beads, sluggish and dark, pooling into a cracked saucer, soon sprinkled with cumin, to keep demons from licking it. Payment is 3 obols you'd earmarked for barley, but the man adds a bonus, a wax tablet listing supplementary rituals. Sleep on your right side, burn laurel leaves at moonrise, whisper paeans until hoarse. If fever climbs, proceed to the Asclepion outside the Dipolon gate, lie among sacred dogs and non-venomous temple snakes, and await a healing dream. Success, he shrugs, depends on faith and fortune, mostly fortune. By midday the fever slackens, traded for a pounding dehydration that makes your skull feel hammered thin as your breastplate. You hobble to the agora hoping for diluted wine. At the fountain house, 2 slaves heave a marble corpse basin onto a cart. Cloth slips, revealing waxy feet streaked with purple blotches. Someone hisses, "Typhos, plague." The crowd parts like torn cloth, everyone holding breath as if air itself now bites. You count 3 coughs, 4 sneezes, a child's whimper. Memory flashes of last summer's epidemic streets, piled with bodies too quick for proper pyres, priests dropping mid-prayer, Pericles himself carried off, while plans for empire still dried on parchment. 3 days later the plague whispers seem to retreat, and the city, stubborn as a thistle, decides to celebrate anyway. A crimson banner unfurls above the theatre of Dionysus signal that the great Dionysia will proceed. You join the surge pouring down the southern slope of the Acropolis, trading elbow jabs with farmers, metics, even a few perfumed aristoi who keep sandal straps tucked so plebes don't step on them. Sunrise stings your eyes, yet the stone benches already simmer. You juggle between scorched thigh and numb foot as you hunt a sliver of shade. No tickets, no assigned seats, just hierarchy by muscle and luck. A chorus of flutes erupts, and the crowd roars with a mix of reverence and hangover. 5 tragedies, 1 satyr play. Then comedies until the moon drifts above the Parthenon. An endurance trial disguised as worship. The first drama unfurls. Kings in masks howl at treacherous oracles. Blood packets burst, and the audience howls louder, critiquing each trochaic twist. You learn quickly to cheer when everyone else does. Miss the cue and a fishbone might bounce off your skull. Mid-morning the sun climbs higher, bleaching masks and minds alike. Vendors weave through aisles, hawking wilted figs, vinegar wine, and roasted chickpeas that crack teeth like pebbles. You gnaw anyway. Hunger cares little for dentition. By noon, sweat streaks the marble like melted wax. Someone faints near the thyme bushes, ringing the orchestra pit. Slaves drag the limp body aside, pat faces with foul water, and the playwright resumes without pause show, must placate the god. A cloud drifts across the sky. Audience sighs as if Athena herself extended a cool palm. During the satyr interlude, ribald dancers in goatskin loincloths gyrate to double pipes, poking crude fun at the high tragedies just swallowed. Laughter rattles the seating tiers, half relief, half delirium. Yet exhaustion sets talons. Eyelids flutter even as a new chorus files in, cloaks shimmering with imported Tyrian dye that alone costs more than your father's house. You consider slipping out, but departure before the final judging risks offending Dionysus and perhaps the fickle mob. So you stay, legs cramping, ears buzzing, mind drifting to the plague corpse's purple feet. The last comedian waddles on stage, mask caricaturing a well-known general. Jokes land like spear thrusts. The general sits 4 rows away, face stony, while thousands cackle. Democracy, you muse, can be lethal, but it is never dull. The dawn after the Dionysia finds you limping through the agora, ears still ringing with flute shrieks and hecklers' laughter. Marble stalls, slick with spilled fish brine, steam under the newborn sun. You aim for a wineskin vendor anything to rinse the dust congealed on your tongue when a voice hooks you by the collar of your conscience. "Tell me, friend," it purrs, "is courage taught or born?" There he is, Socrates, bald scalp glowing like a lighthouse for trouble, ringed by apprentices who jot every grunt he utters. Before you can dodge, he blocks your path with a smile that suggests both kindness and vivisection. The circle tightens. Escape routes evaporate. You mutter something about courage sprouting in the heart. He tilts his head, owl-like. Ah, so the heart thinks now. Fascinating. Does it also draft decrees? Laughter mostly nervous ripples through the onlookers. A fishmonger pauses mid-gutting, entrails dangling, eager for intellectual gore. Socrates nudges again. If courage is natural, shall we praise a boar? If taught, who is the teacher of Athens? You feel the crowd's gaze tugging at your sleeve. Hungry for either enlightenment or entertainment, it makes no difference which. Sweat beads under your chiton. You smell yesterday's theatre baked into your skin. You try a feint. The city itself teaches us, through laws and example. He claps like a delighted child. Wonderful. So laws shape virtue. Yet who shapes the laws? Not women, not foreigners, not slaves. Only us, he gestures at the citizens within earshot, and we alas are frequently ignorant. Therefore our laws may be ignorant. Therefore our virtue, he spreads his palms, letting the syllogism hang like a noose. A murmur wobbles through the circle. Some nod, others scowl. One youth scratches the word asabii impiety into the dust with a sandal toe, just loud enough to be noticed. You recall how rumours ferment. Question the city too loudly, and you risk more than embarrassment. Across the square, a potter sells fresh ostraca shards, ready for etching names at the next ostracism vote. 6,000 scratches, and even heroes vanish for a decade. Socrates, seeing your gaze drift to the pottery pile, chuckles. Fear not. Truth like wine may sting, but it cleans the wound. He pats your shoulder, dismisses the crowd, and ambles toward the stoa, pupils in tow. Conversation dissipates, but tension lingers like aftertaste. You exhale, surprised your legs still bear you. 2 weeks later, the polis gathers for its favourite bloodless execution, the annual ostracophoria. The sun is barely a coin above the Acropolis when you step into the agora, yet booths already brim with piles of pottery shards, yesterday's cracked wine cups, reborn as political daggers. A potter shouts, smooth edges, easy carving, as if comfort matters when you're banishing a man for 10 years. Rumour says 3 names lead the whispers. Cleon's fire, Bran nephew, a silver-tongued orator who mocks Sparta too loudly. Nicias, hero of the last naval raid, now suspected of aiming at a crown. And, improbably, Socrates himself, for corrupting boys with questions sharper than spears. You feel the crowd's temperature rise, hotter than the flagstones. At a low table, a scribe sells literacy. 2 obols to etch any name you hiss. Illiterate farmers queue, call out syllables, watch their choices appear in graceful Ionic script. Nearby, a rival scribe works cheaper, misspelling on purpose. Rumour claims enough bot shards can save a patron. Democracy, you think, runs on both ideals and loopholes. You finger an ostracon, thumb worrying its edge while your mind ricochets. Vote out a demagogue and you might dodge another war. Exile a general and Persian coin could fill the gap he leaves. Target a philosopher, and silence settles until another questioner sprouts. Each option feels like soaring off a limb to cure a fever. Bell clang. Magistrates herd citizens toward fenced channels, leading to wicker baskets tholos for the Kerameikos gate, agora for Pnyx Hill. Once you drop the shard, there is no retrieving it. Behind you, an old woman mutters the same prayer to Athena with every step. In front, a youth jokes that exile on the coast sounds like a holiday. Laughter cracks, brittle as dried clay. Your turn. You hover over the basket, pulse drumming in your ears louder than the market noise. A name burns on your shard, lines dark with lamp soot. You release. Pottery clinks against potterione, more pebble in a rising landslide. By late afternoon the counting will begin. Columns of shards stacked like skulls. Magistrates tallying toward the fateful 6,000 mark. Until then, the city must wait, pretending to bargain for olives or haggle over sandals while thoughts churn. Who will sleep tonight planning a decade in exile? And who will wake tomorrow suddenly saferer, suddenly powerful. Dusk bruises the sky purple when the clerks finally finish stacking the ostraka into tidy little tombs of clay. Their torches hiss, stealing the agora back from night, but you're already threading south toward the Dipolon Gate. The air grows cooler here, spiced with pine smoke and something sour sweat that is not entirely free. A dozen new slaves shuffle past, hands twisted in a single rawhide rope. The tallest still wears a fragment of Thracian tartan. The smallest can't be 12 summers old. A dealer marches beside them, jangling an iron scale and calling bids to no one in particular advertising in case someone with coin lurks in the dark. You wonder how many of today's voters strolled home crooning about freedom while this convoy changed hands right under the same lanterns. In Athens, 1 neck in 3 carries a collar. You know the categories now. Household drudges for cooking, tutoring and bed warming. Craft specialists you rent by the day like hammers. And the graveyard cast of Lorien, the silver mines that fund democracy's marble ego. A lamp maker once told you, Lorien men do not die, they dissolve, lungs first, then skin, then memory. When they're finally hauled out, no ceremony spoils the ore. Your own landlord owns a pair, Murine, who keeps the courtyard fig tree alive, and Dromon, a carrion with a voice like cracked armour. Good people. Except, of course, they're not legally people. Last week, Dromon broke a jar. The landlord fined himself by docking Dromon's rations. Justice served. The rope-linked column halts at a tavern door. Inside, 3 men raise cups mined by the very throats now hoarse from dust. The dealer unties 1 slave, a broad-backed woman, and shoves her forward. He flips her cloak to show buyers there are no whip-scarce added value. She keeps her eyes fixed on some private horizon, refusing the scene permission to enter her skull. You feel the urge to look away, but what direction is free of chains? From the Acropolis, a trumpet brays the signal that today's tally is complete. Somewhere a name, etched 6,000 times in clay, has just turned into a 10-year void. The trumpet's echo rolls down the streets, curls around the slave column, and seems to ask a riddle no sophist can answer. What is exile to a man who already owns his footsteps? You pivot toward the sound, half sick with curiosity, half afraid the announced exile might be the wrong manner, maybe the right one. The trumpet's echo has scarcely died when a sharper sound splits the nighter child's wail, thin as ripped silk. Down the slope of the agora, a boy staggers, both hands pressed to his side, vomit spattering his sandals. Colic, someone snorts. Nemesis, insists another. Either way, the verdict is unanimous. Get him to the Iatros before the gods decide the matter. Curiosity drags you after the small procession. The healer's shop squats between a brazier maker and a wineskin tanner, and it smells exactly like that alliance. Burnt metal, sour leather, fear, sweat. Lamps reveal rows of bronze scalpels, bone saws, and leech jar stools of salvation or sabotage, depending on the fee. The Iatros is part barber, part priest, entirely confident. He palms the boy's forehead, squints at the purple stain on his lips, and pronounces, "Black bile invading. We bleed, we purge, we pray." A slave pins the patient's arm. A razor flicks. Dark ribbons drum into a cracked bowl, already half, full from earlier customers. 4 humour theory in action. Too much of any liquid and your body revolts. The cure is subtraction. On the opposite bench, a hoplite with a splinted shin inhales bitter smoke from smouldering asafoetida. Each gasp costs him a silver drachmatic proof he can afford the deluxe package. Behind him, a laundress waits her turn, clutching a rag over a knife slice that has already gone the colour of spoiled olives. She offers 2 coppers and a promise to launder the linens free. The Iatros nods barter medicine at its finest. A wax tablet nailed to the door lists the going rates. Simple leeching, 2 obols bone setting, 4 obols plus wine. Trepanning the skull, price negotiable, patient must supply drill. Temple referral, donation at your discretion, gods prefer gold. Temple referral is the euphemism for surrender. Those who can't pay sleep among the sacred snakes of Asclepius, hoping dreams do what steel cannot. You've seen men limp in chanting and shuffle out unchanged, but strangely hopeful, as though faith itself is an opiate. Mid-incision, the healer pauses. Outside, another trumpet groans, this one slower, almost a cough in bronze. Murmurs ripple through the room. Was it Cleon, Nicias, or the philosopher who drew the fatal 6,000? The barber's blade hovers above fresh skin. Even the leeches seem to hold their crawl. You step into the street, nostrils still burning with garlic and smoke. Morning slips over the Acropolis like fresh plaster, and already the city hums with a single, contagious word, Dionysia. You follow the current downhill toward the theatre of Dionysus, swept along by potters, fishmongers, generals, and their slaves, all equal for once in a stampede for stone seats. Equality ends at the Archon's rope. Rich men glide to marble thrones cushioned in fleece while you scramble for a sun-blasted ledge, knees tucked to avoid a priest's goat. A herald raises a wreath of ivy and shouts the programme. 3 tragedies, 1 satyr play, 1 comedian all-day gauntlet of tears, panic and punchlines. Behind him, masked actors stretch their throats with bee honey and wine. Chorus boys test steps that will echo off the limestone like heartbeat in a tomb. Somewhere in that masked swarm strides a new poet whose script has already been called A War in Hexameters. Word is, he skewers every living politician and at least one deceased hero. Box office gold or death warrant. The first tragedy detonates at sunrise. Agamemnon's blood, Cassandra's screams, a rain of crimson wool that stains the orchestra floor. Old veterans sob loudest. A child beside you yawns. Intermission tastes of garlic sausages and sour wine. Vendors bark prices, while philosophers practice rebuttals for arguments not yet begun. By noon, the sun turns the theatre into a kiln. No one leaves. To miss a chorus is to insult the god. Sweat glues, tunic to spine, olives shrivel in their jars, tempers pickle. When the satyr play prances, in goat-tailed men thrusting cork falloilata erupts like a cracked dam. You laugh too. It's either that or melt. Finally, the comedy arrives, swaggering in a cloud of reed pipe music. The lead actor wears a leather mask with a built-in grin wider than a shield. He points at the VIP benches and bellows. Behold the heroes who drink the city's wine yet piss our taxes. The crowd roars. Someone flings a fig that splatters perfectly on a magistrate's cloak. The actor bows, milking the uproar. Then Pivot Sand levels his prop spear straight at the section where you sit. And you, spectators of misery, what deed buys your laughs? Will you bleed on the fields, or only on the benches? Around you faces freeze, caught between amusement and accusation. The spear's wooden tip seems to single you out, a reminder that theatre is both mirror and blade, and that in Athens, even entertainment drafts recruits. The chorus begins a new verse, drum beats rolling like distant thunder. The final symbol of the chorus still buzzes in your skull when the theatre vomits its audience into the streets. Sun-baked flagstones sizzle under thousands of sandals, funneling the crowd downhill toward the agora like wine into a crater. They're blocking the flow as casually as a stray goat stands. A squat, barefoot man in a threadbare cloak. Socrates, Athens' resident itch. "Stay a moment, cavalryman," he calls, snagging a plume, helmeted youth. "Do you claim to be brave?" "Certainly." "Then tell me what is courage." The soldier blinks, mouth moving without finding purchase. Laughter ripples outward, the ring of spectators tightens. Socrates attacks with questions the way a potter centers. Clay pressure, release, pressure until the soldier admits he knows no more of courage than of winged pigs. Next prey, a fishmonger attempting escape. Is profit good even when it fattens villains? The man splutters about feeding daughters. So goodness changes with the stomach. More snickers, a few groans. You hesitate half a heartbeat too long. The philosopher's eyes lock on yours. Tell us, friend, would you choose to possess justice or merely appear just? A hush falls so fast you hear gulls scissoring the sky. The right answer is a maze, the wrong a cliff, and Socrates has grease-slicked the floor. Before you can stammer, a perfume-scented voice cuts in. Enough riddles, stone, head. Meletus young, handsome, hungry shoulders through the ring, clutching a waxed tablet dented by many names. Whispers say he's drafting the formal charge. Socrates, corrupter of youth, denier of the gods. Socrates bows as though offered a garland. Ah, Meletus, have you finally determined whether wisdom offends the gods or only cowards? The younger man's cheeks redden like overripe pomegranates. He lifts his stylus, eyes sweeping the crowd. Athens prefers harmony to your venom. Speak again and I write. Sunlight tilts, painting shields gold and faces copper, but sharpening the air to a blade. Around you, wages are laid in murmurs will, Socrates, parry or press. A single syllable could spark cheers, stones, or history itself, and both men draw breath as if about to leap. Socrates exhales first, a slow, almost affectionate sigh. Right, dear Meletus, he murmurs, but make sure your ink is thick enough to drown the truth. The crowd's nervous titter breaks like thin ice. No riot. Today only an aftertaste of danger. A trumpet blares from the agora proper, saving Meletus from a retort and you from another public vivisection. Ostracophoria begins, cries the herald. Instantly, the philosophical skirmish dissolves into a fresh stampede. You're carried along a human river toward a cordoned square where 3 bronze urns wait like open mouths. Officials hand out broken potsherd-sostracathe days ballots. One side is glazed, the other blank as opportunity. Rules are simple. Scratch a name, drop the shard, vanish. 6,000 votes and the winner earns a 10-year, luggage-only vacation. No trial, no appeal, property safe, but honour scuttled. It's democracy with a machete. Prune the too tall, the too rich, the too popular before they sprout tyranny. You accept a shard still warm from the kiln. Its jagged edge pricks your thumb, a reminder that every freedom here has a cutting side. Around you murmurs tally reputations like market prices. Hyperbolos, the demagogue yakking ruin. Alcibiades? Brilliant, but louder than thunder. No, Themistocles came back rich. Can't trust that. A grey-haired woman, face netted by sun, hisses, Right Pericles, boy. Walls high as his ego drown us in taxes. She can't, vote-only citizens can but her bitterness, hunts for a borrowed hand. You glance at Socrates, now leaning against a pillar, watching without blinking. If enough angry shards ever bear his name, exile would spare him the hemlock history whispers about. Yet he seems almost amused, as though fate itself were another pupil to interrogate. Stylus poised. You weigh alliances, debts, gossip. The shard suddenly feels heavier than a hoplite shield. Scratch the wrong name and you invite vendettas. Scratch none and appear cowardly. Sweat ghosts down your spine. Somewhere a child giggles while carving letters she can barely pronounce a vote, counts the same as yours. A pebble clock clicks, warning the hour is nearly spent. Officials begin sealing the urns. Stragglers sprint forward, cloaks flapping like startled crows. You breathe. Carvione's swift etching that could rewrite a life then, slip your fragment into the bronze throat. It clinks against 100 others, indistinguishable now. At dusk, officials upend the urns. Shard avalanches clatter like dry bones. Scribes shout tallies while the crowd chants each name louder than the last. A brittle cheer erupts Hyperbolos has won his 10-year holiday. His supporters wail, enemies laugh, but no one is shocked. In Athens, a man can wake famous and fall extinct before sunset. You slip away toward the city gate, stomach growling for barley yet oddly knotted. Twilight paints the long walls violet, and the air tastes of half-smoke and sweat. Halfway home, you're forced aside by a funeral train. 4 slaves haul a plank bearing a boy who yesterday still elbowed you for figs in the market. No shroud, just coin, weighted eyelids, and waxy skin. Behind him walks his mother, hair shorn, breasts bare in ritual grief. She does not cry her. Throat has surrendered even that luxury. Another turn, another reminder. 2 hoplites hobble past. Bronze greaves spattered black. Their comrades limp behind, spears serving as crutches. A messenger reads casualty rolls from today's skirmish near Potidea. 50. 3 names, none older than 30. Families cluster like birds around spilled grain, waiting to hear whether they may mourn or must keep waiting. At the fountain, night water creaks from the spout. You bend to fill your jar beside a midwife rinsing bloody cloth. Boy died, she mutters to no one. Cord round the neck. Mother lives this time. She wrings the rag. Crimson swirls briefly, then vanishes down the drain. The midwife crosses herself to Apollo Healer, then to Artemis Protector, hedging bets. Back on the main road, a skinny physician advertises cures by torchlight. His table offers garlic cloves, leeches in a wine cup, and a bronze lancet dulled to a whisper. For a few obols he'll bleed fevers or pierce boils. For an extra coin he offers prayer to Asclepius as anaesthetic. You watch a farmer volunteer his infected arm, teeth clenched. One slice, a hiss, and pus dribbles like spoiled milk. The crowd wrinkles noses, but Lingersbane is a public lesson. Your neighbour Philetta tugs your sleeve. Plague ship spotted off Piraeus, she whispers. Sailors coughing black. They'll quarantinize? Like last time? You answer with the shrug Athenians reserve for fate. Somewhere between bravado and dread. Quarantine is a theory, trade is a necessity. The gods are notoriously fickle. A wind rises from the Saronic Gulf, warm yet carrying the faintest copper tang, as if rust already prowls the blood of the living. Night inside a cheap Athenian house is a negotiation. The mud brick walls you praised at sundown now sweat out every captured ray, turning the single room into a kiln. You lie on a straw mat that pops with hidden lice. Each scratch opens fresh invitations for infection. The goat chained near the doorway shifts, hooves clacking. Its breath steams the air even in darkness. You roll, hunting a breeze through the open doorway. There is none than doze in sticky fragments until a rooster and the city's first water haulers declare the truce over. Dawn is orange fire dripping across uneven rooftops. You stand, joints angry from the straw's revenge, and grope for the clay hydria. It's empty, of course. Water is weight, currency, life. So you shoulder the jar and step outside barefoot onto slate already warming like a forge plate. 3 streets later, you reach the public fountain. A queue snakes around the marble basin. Slaves, widows, children half awake. Every splash echoes against colonnades, mixing with the rasp of styluses scratching daily graffiti. By the time your turn arrives, shoulder muscles tremble. You fill, lift, stagger back, practicing the rolling gait that keeps 10 gallons from sloshing onto your tunic. Inside again, privacy dissolves. Your cousins still sleep inches away. A neighbour girl ducks through the doorway to borrow embers. The goat stares, unconvinced of your dignity. You strip to the waist, drizzle olive oil along arms and chest, and scrape downward with a curved bronze strigil. Grey muck, sweat, and yesterday's dust slither off in ropes. No soap exists to chase the smell you settle for less awful. A quick charcoal rub across the teeth, a spit of vinegar rinse, and you reknot the linen rectangles that pass for clothes, praying today's wind ignores your safety pins. Breakfast waits like a dare. Barley mazza baked 2 days ago, now hard enough to audition as roofing tile. You dunk a chunk into watered wine, counting 3 heartbeats so it won't crack a molar, then chew until your jaw numbs. An older aunt appears, slices a single fig into 6 sliver sewn for each person. Women last, and the fruit's sweetness feels illegal. No one sits. There are no chairs. You eat standing, nodding, calculating the hours before hunger circles back. Outside, sunlight sharpens. Across the alley, a crier lists able-bodied men needed for tomorrow's patrol along the Boeotian frontier bring. Your own spear, helmet, rations. His voice slides through the neighbourhood like a knife looking for volunteers. The crier summons still rattles in your ribs as you hurry toward the agora, barley pebbling in your stomach. Every male between 18 and 60 must add his breath to the phalanx sooner or later. Today might be your turn. First stop is the dusty shed behind the gymnasium where rusting shields lean like sunburned turtles. Pick one that wobbles least, the armourer says without looking up, busy hammering a dent from someone else's tomorrow. You test a hoplon the colour of dried blood heavy, but the leather grip holds. Good enough. Armor, however, is strictly BYO. You own a bronze helmet, inherited from an uncle who didn't need it after Sphacteria, plus a linothorax stiffened with glue and hope. You tug it on. It smells of old sweat and camphor, leaves your aunt packed inside as an anti-moth charm. Spear? Straight enough. Sandals? Already fraying, yet replacements cost more than a month's olives. You whisper a bargain to Ares. Let the straps hold, and you'll sacrifice a cocktail if victory's quick. At the practice field, the trainer an oak of a man with scars like map, linesbarks, formation drills. 40 shoulders interlock, 40 shields overlap. The wall must move as one beast with bronze scales. Slackers earn a blow from his ash staff. You learn fast. Bend knees. Keep shield edge kissing your neighbours. Thrust when the command snaps like lightning. Sweat rains, dust clouds, sandals slip. The sun climbs, merciless. Branding necks left exposed by tilted helmets. During the midday pause, you and another recruit, Socrian, share a wineskin. He jokes about Spartan boys gnawing on iron rations, but the laugh curdles when he mentions no veteran pensions-only funerary plaques. His brother came home last spring, lightened of a leg, and now begs outside the stoa. You both fall silent, counting cicada chirps. Across the field, women arrive with linens and water. They cannot vote, yet their hands keep the city breathing. One girl eyes, flint bright, despite the glare laces, a jug to her back. Someone mutters the usual slur about women and warfare. She ignores it, pours water along a row of blistered shoulders, then vanishes like shade. The trainer ends the session by reading tomorrow's roster. Names tumble out, each a pebble dropped in a deep well. Yours hangs in the air last. The line of men turns to gauge the newest shield in their wall, and for a breath the world feels narrow as a spear shaft. Dusk bleeds in behind Lycobetus. You limp back through alleys veiled in apricot dusk, while the city's hidden enginets women whirs at full tilt. Smoke from hearths spirals skyward. The scent of boiling lentils wrestles with that of sheep dung. At your doorway, your cousin Cleo kneels over the handmill, shoulders rocking like a metronome as grain turns to flour. 2 toddlers cling to her skirt. She hushes them with a song no man will ever bother to learn. Between grinds she studies your armour, calculating how much linen patching it will cost her own cloak. Inside, the goat has been evicted. In its place stands a loom as tall as you. Another cousin, Melita, works the shuttle. Weaving a wool chiton for an uncle she will never see in battle but must still outfit. Every clack of wood is a heartbeat of household economy. Their domain may be 4 walls, yet every stitch shores up the city more reliably than any speech in the Pnyx. You try to help fetch water, slice onions, but Cleo waves you off. Not out of deference, but efficiency. A soldier's clumsy hands slow the rhythm. Sit, she orders, and keep the children from the hearth. Authority wrapped in quiet iron. You obey, telling the twins a story of Hermes stealing Apollo's cattle. They gape, half from wonder, half from the helmet reflecting firelight. When darkness settles, a runner knocks. A reminder that the ecclesia meets at first light to vote on increased grain taxes war isn't cheap. Only citizens may speak, yet the decision will echo loudest in these women's empty pantries. Cleo pauses at the millstone. Will they raise it? You shrug, ashamed of the power stitched to your name and the ignorance stitched to your head. A final task before sleep. Scratch your name on a potsherd in case tomorrow's assembly turns into an ostracism ballot. 1 shard. 1 exile democracy measured in broken pottery. You press the stylus, forming letters that could banish a neighbour for being too rich, too popular, or merely unlucky. The clay flakes under your thumb, fragile as civic goodwill. Outside, the moon lifts over the Acropolis, pale and impartial. Somewhere beyond those walls lies the Boeotian frontier, where shields collide and decisions made in daylight are paid for in night blood. You roll out your straw mat, helm beside you, listening to the loom's faint clack-steady, relentless wondering which thread will snap first. The goat, newly tethered outside, bleats once, as if it knows the answer, then silence stretches, waiting for dawn's verdict. First light finds you climbing the worn spine of the Pnyx with 6,000 other men. Sandals slapping rocks still cool from night. A red-dyed rope stretches across the entrance. Scythian archers foreign police in tasseled cap snap it forward like a shepherd's whip, shoving dawdlers toward their sacred duty. Anyone smeared with the paint pays a fine for tardiness, even if a spear drill kept him up or a child's fever kept him home. Democracy, you remind yourself, starts on time. At the summit, the stone speakers platform the Bemijuts like a prow over the crowd. Around it sprawls the sea of citizens, farmers smelling of manure, silver minters with blackened fingernails, philosophers already rehearsing objections. Missing are the women whose grain these men will tax, the metics who weld triremes, the slaves who will haul that grain from Piraeus. Freedom here is a gated garden. The password is, both parents Athenian. A herald lifts a bronze trumpet. 'Tis sun is uplit, the polis decide. First agenda: increase on imported barley to fund new hoplite cuirasses. An elder named Philocrates mounts the beamer, voice shaking like a goat's tail. He warns of famine if the levy passes. Murmurs rise, palms slap neighbours' shoulders, but no one yet dares the dangerous art of speaking too well. A gifted orator can sway Mindsand paint a target on his own back. Next, stewards wheel out 2 amphorae, one brimming with white pebbles, one with black. A vote by show of colour. You fetch a white stone against the tax but hesitate. Clio's millstone flashes before your eyes, then the trainer's cracked cuirass. Feed children or armour soldiers? You squeeze the pebble until knuckles blanch, then drop it in the black jar for yes. The amphora thuds, choice becomes law. No pause for regret. A scribe unrolls a scarlet list. Today is also Ostracophorithi, yearly culling of the conspicuous. Pottery shards and styluses circulate like hungry insects. The rules are simple. Scratch one name. 6,000 votes exile the winner for 10 years. No trial, no appeal. A man behind you whispers that the strategos Hyperbolos has grown too proud. Another claims a popular playwright is corrupting morals. You cough, tasting dust and fear, and etch letters before doubt can stiffen your wrist. Letters finished, you stare at the jagged clay rough edges that could gut a finger. Somewhere, perhaps 5 paces away, someone else is carving your own name. You feel it like a chill despite the climbing sun. The crowd pours off the Pnyx like grain through a funnel, chattering about taxes, armour prices, and the price of keeping one's head down. Shards clack inside wicker baskets carried by clerks. Each fragment seems to hiss a name. You pace beside them, suddenly aware of how loud sandals sound when a decade of exile might ride on a syllable carved by a stranger. At the agora the counting begins. A cordon of wooden tables forms a crude altar to arithmetic. 500 slaves stand ready with abacuses, lips moving as fast as fingers. For every 10 ostraca tallied, a herald marks a chalk stroke on a pine board. Behind him, the arch of the stoa casts merciful shade, but you stay in the sun, refusing comfort until the verdict arrives. Names drift on the heat. Hyperbolos, Nikomachos, Socratagen. Laughter, booze, and a few panicked prayers swirl together. You long for the weight of your shield to give your hands purpose. Instead, you grip an invisible spear, palm slick. Pebbles of sweat fall from your chin as the strokes climb 4,000. 5, 5.5. A boy runs past waving a shard like a victory token. His father jerks him back, whispering that celebrations earn enemies. The boy pouts, folds the shard into his tunic like a secret. 6,000. The threshold. All discussion shrivels. A herald holds aloft the chosen shard, edge still wet with counting Clark's blood where it cut him. A reminder that words here are blades. The crowd cranes. He inhales, opens his mouth, but a trumpet blasts from the north gate. Horsemen thunder in, lathered mounts scattering pigeons. Their commander doesn't dismount. He simply lifts a crimson-sealed scroll. "Dispatch from the frontier," he shouts. Boeotia advances past Delian urgent levy required. Just like that, exile pauses mid-breath. The board of chalk strokes is forgotten, the shard-laden baskets shoved aside. Men sprint toward armory sheds. Philosophers yank off cloaks to reveal scrawny torsos that now belong to the phalanx. and shopkeepers mentally close their stalls. You stagger, caught between dread of a name you still haven't heard, and dread of the spear call you cannot refuse. If the levy departs before the final tally, today's exile might march in the ranks as free as any citizen who voted him away, a loophole carved by iron rather than ink. The commander's scroll is passed to magistrates. Wax cracks, brows furrow. You edge closer, but a Scythian blocks you with his bowstaff. "You'll know soon enough," he says in halting Greek. The agora mutates into an anthill struck by a staff. Merchants upend their stalls to pry bronze spearheads from hidden compartments. Boys bolt toward the harbour, ordered to fetch spare oars. Even the ostraka clerks, hands still bleeding, are handed slings and pouches of river stones. The city has flipped a coin debate to battle, and you feel its twin weights in your chest. A magistrate leaps onto a grain crate, scroll in fist. "All citizens to muster at Kerameikos by sundown," he bellows. "Bring armour, rations for 3 days, and mind your own wives until the gods return you." Laughter, nervous and thin, ripples outward. Someone shouts, "What of the vote?" The magistrate shrugs. "War first, gossip later." You sprint through cramped alleys that stink of goat dung and boiling dye, desperate to reach home before the levy drum. Past the pottery kilns, air thick with red dust, you nearly collide with Cleo, her apron chalked white from grinding barley. "They're saying Boeotians burned the orchards," she says. You nod, trying to memorize the curve of her cheekbone against the noonday glare. She presses a linen pouch into your palm-dried figs and a sliver of goat cheese and pretends not to see your trembling. Inside your one-room house, summer heat has turned the mud brick walls into a kiln. Straw mats reek of sweat. You yank down the bronze helmet hanging beside the door. Its cheek plates are dented, the plume threadbare, but it's yours. Leather greaves follow, still stained from last season's skirmish. Each piece feels heavier than fear itself. Over the din of shouting neighbours, you hear the distant thunk of the Klepsydrath water clock at the courthouse marking the hour. Little time left. You pour a trickle from the household amphora over your head. The water tastes of clay and iron, but it strips a layer of grit from your skin. No bathhouses today, no perfumed oil, only this momentary baptism before steel meets flesh. At the doorway, Cleo ties a red woolen thread around your wrist, a charm against spear points. "If the ostraka spared you, perhaps Ares will," she whispers. You don't tell her that someone may have carved your name. You don't know yourself. Instead, you kiss the salt from her brow and step outside. The street flows northward toward Kerameikos, like a river of bronze and linen. Shields glint, sandals slap, and somewhere a lyre plays an off-key march trying to sound brave. Overhead, gulls circle, sensing the promise of carrion. Kerameikos yawns before you, a dusty plain littered with half-finished tombstones marble, meant for the dead pressed into service by the still breathing. Artisans have flipped the slabs to use as impromptu tables. Helmeted clerks scratch columns of names onto the polished undersides, while slaves ladle water from cracked cisterns into any mouth that shouts, "Here!" You join the line snaking toward the armour inspectors. Each hoplite must prove he can outfit himself. Cuirass, shield, spear, short sword. No gear, no place in the phalanx, no place, and you join the baggage train or the ditch. Your bronze cuirass pinches the red wool thread at your wrist. The charm itches like a conscience you cannot scratch. Ahead, a farmer argues that his spear split chasing wolves and he had no time to buy a new ash shaft. The inspector, gaunt as a throwing javelin, stamps the farmer's clay tablet with a skull. Unfit. 2 slaves drag the man aside. His wife wails loud enough to rattle a raven from a cypress. You tighten your grip on your own spear, testing the wood spring, pretending the gouges from past battles are honourable and not proof of careless blocks. A trumpet blares. Silence snaps down. Strategos Demade silver-haired, missing 2 fingers climbs, a funerary stele, and unfurls a scroll. "By decree of the Boule," he announces, "those under suspicion of ostracism will march, but their shards will be read before we break camp. Any condemned must quit the line and depart the city by dawn." A collective exhale, mercy served with a razor's edge. Your heart pounds so loudly you almost miss the first name. Nicomachos, son of Lysania, stepped forward. A bulky potter mutters a curse, kisses his daughter's braid, and trudges toward the exile pen. Next, Hyperbolos of Amorgos. Cheers. Everyone expected him. The strategos pauses, squints at the next line on the scroll. Sweat beads along your helmet rim and trickles down your spine, cold despite the heat. A cloud slides over the sun, dimming the world to pewter. Gulls screech above the graveyard, as though petitioning for quick work. Demades clears his throat. His tongue seems to search for moisture, finds none. Kleonikos, he begins, then the trumpet shrieks again, 2 urgent blasts from the north wall. Scouts race in, dust geysering at their heels. One leaps from his horse before it stops, eyes wide as if still seeing distant horror. Boeotian advance is faster than feared, he gasps.